Hey guys, if you're shopping for knives and gear, make sure you check out the description of the video you're watching right now for links to some great online retailers. There's also individual links for knives that I personally recommend. Thanks! What's going on, YouTube? Metal Complex here, and today I want to talk about my newest XM18. This is the DLT Trading exclusive Fullard spear, but it is a non-flipper. You can pick this knife up at DLT Trading. I will be linking this knife and other Hinderer knives in general down below so you guys can check that out. So I have reviewed the XM18 and XM24 into the ground. There is no reason to do a review on this. You can check out a full review on the XM18 in multiple generations and a bunch of different configurations on my Hinderer knives playlist, which has like 60 videos on just Hinderer knives in it. So you can check that out. For anybody who doesn't know, I am a gigantic Hinderer fan. I love Hinderer knives. Even if I was to review this, I mean, just, you know, spoiler alert, it's an incredible knife. That would be the end result of the review. But this one has, you know, a setup, you know, if you look back to the other XM18 3.5 inches that I have acquired, there's certain things that I look for. And, you know, in the non-flipper one, the first generation 6 or tri-way non-flipper that I acquired, I think like a year ago, I was like, yeah, this kind of just works out really, really well, right? I've thrown around the word Excalibur. For anybody who doesn't know, the word Excalibur on this channel is a way of saying like any knife that is ideal for any individual person. So like my Excalibur would be, you know, based on my own thoughts, the stuff that I look for, and your Excalibur would be based on your thoughts, what you look for, right? And the closest knife in existence that I have handled to exactly what it is that I look for in an ideal knife, and I define that for myself, right? Whether it's based on use, fidget factor, appearance, all this stuff. I have a whole series on that as well, so you can check that out. Quest for the Ultimate Folding Knife. The XM18 3.5 inch in full titanium is the closest knife that's come to that. And I found that while I did enjoy the flipper version of this exact blade shape, the flipper version of the slicer, right, and the non-flipper spear point, this is kind of everything that I like mixed between a lot of those. This is about my favorite variant that exists, right? I seem to say that every single time that I acquire a new XM, right? But I've gotten to the point where I know I'm going to keep getting Hinderer knives. You know, I've got two right now. The XM24 Dark Horse is what I call it, the Spanto in the Dark Stonewash DLC. But I feel like at some point, you know, I don't know how long this generation is going to exist. It's doing really, really well right now through Hinderer knives. So I don't know that there are plans to change anything anytime soon. But after handling this and playing with it, I've realized I just love it. I love this configuration so much. And I thought, you know, what really is there left to improve on this platform, right? The XM18 has remained the same for so long. I mean, it's got a kind of blocky scale structure. It's got a pillar construction on the frame. It's using M390. It's a frame lock with a steel lock bar insert. The tri-way pivot system allows you to swap out between phosphor bronze, nylon, and bearings whenever you want. It comes with all that stuff, right? It's in a lot of ways, you know, in some ways, it's, you know, right in line with what we want from today's premium, you know, knife world. And in a lot of ways, it's also kind of like some design, like versus some designs that are very contoured and very, you know, much less blocky, right? It's almost feeling to me like it's kind of a why fix what isn't broken kind of thing. Like it doesn't need any additional refinements, even though a lot of other knives in today's modern knife world have those additional refinements, right? So I guess what I'm saying is that, you know, what do I expect from Hinderer knives in the future? And, you know, if I'm referring to a hypothetical Generation 7 XM18, which is not something that's confirmed at all, it's just me, this is just me thinking in my head, you know, what would that look like? What would I expect from it, right? There is no indication that there's going to be an evolution of the XM18 anytime soon. It could be years before we see something like that, if ever. But yeah, so what is it that I love about this, and what do I expect from Hinderer knives in the future is essentially what this video is going to be about. Make sure to follow me on Instagram at metal_complex. that would be much appreciated. And thank you so much to all my generous patrons who are supporting me right now. If you'd like to get your hands on some of these cool stickers and some other benefits, there's, of course, a link down in the description. Your support would mean the world to me. All right, so first off, let's talk about the XM18 non-flippers and why I like those so much. Something that, and I've got a 24 out here, it would be nice to have another XM18 3.5 inch to compare, but the 24 is the only other one that I've got. It's the same thing though. The problem is that the flipper tab is shaped kind of funky. It's kind of sharp, and then where you land is very sharp down here on the jimping. Now, is that something that you'll adapt to? Yeah. If you like the flippers, right? Whether you're looking at a 24, you're looking at a 3.5 inch or a 3 inch, right? It's a minor. It's like that's like mildly annoying, you know, but it's something you'll adapt to. But without the flipper tab, it does solve that problem completely because you don't have to worry about the landing zone because there's nothing there. The detents are also super heavy on both the 24 and 3.5 inch, right? So that makes that point dig into your finger even more. With this being a thumb stud opener, you don't have to worry about that. And the detents are lightened up to make that a thing. You can deploy a flipper 24, 3.5 inch, or 3 inch with the thumb studs, but man, is it painful. It will really dig into your finger to get that done. It's because they're not, optimally placed. First off, as a deployment mechanism, their primary purpose is to be external stops, which is a design that I really like. It's just, in my opinion, it's stronger than a regular stop pin. How much? I don't know. I'm not going to go into that because I don't know. It just seems to be the case. But it is definitely easier to deploy with the thumb studs, and definitely, if you like to do the reverse flick, it's actually possible here. And then because there's no flipper tab, this area down here where there's a choil, I mean, on the 24, it's easy to engage because it's bigger, like it's longer, and it's also deeper. You can see there. But on the 18, 3 inch and 3.5 inch with the flipper tab, there's just not quite enough room to engage with it. You're really cramped in there, and I always feel like I'm running the risk of bringing my finger up on the blade during use. With there not being a flipper tab, this whole area is so much more accessible, and it's just an ergonomic masterpiece. The non-flippers, in my opinion, solve so many problems that's the version of, at least, I mean, I still like my flippers. I'm still going to buy them because I still think they're cool. But if I'm talking about an ideal Hinderer scenario, the 3.5 inch, I think the non-flipper is probably, the one that has the best the best potential outcome and utility, right? Even if they're just minor details. This is very comfortable to manipulate and deploy, and it just works out. And the detent is still plenty heavy enough to keep that blade in place. Now, one step further with this version from DLT, this fullered spear, that fuller allows, I was talking about how the thumb studs, they're accessible now, but they're still not optimally placed. It's still just a little bit awkward to engage with those thumb studs. With this fuller here, which I think looks awesome, the other benefit is that it actually serves as an alternate means of deployment. It is deep enough to get your finger in there, and because the detent's lightened up and you're manipulating that further down the blade, which is easier to break the detent, the reverse flick on this guy is so easy. I love that. That really puts the cherry on top. Hinderer knives have always lacked any excess fidget factor that is present in many other. That is such a big deal right now. People they want alternate means of deployment and ease of deployment outside of, just the thumb studs and the flipper tabs. Everybody likes the thumb holes. Everybody likes the front flippers. They want to be able to sit around and play with the knife when they're not using it, and they don't want their fingers to tire out, right? And I've always loved the aesthetic of Hinderer knives. The flipper tab made it not fun to play with after a little bit, so I found that, non-flippers and specifically this fullered spear is really just fantastic. This is just the most perfect 3.5 inch that I have ever owned, and I'm sure you guys are wondering, what's the deal with the titanium? So the titanium scales, this is a much older one, by the way. This titanium scale does not have the, by the way, you can get my flashlight down in the description if you want it. It does not have the milling on the inside of the scale. Newer titanium scales will have the weight reducing milling. I like these to be a little bit heavier, so that's why I still have this one. They don't make those full like unmilled scales anymore. All the newer titanium scales that you'll see will be milled out. And that's fine. Most people like that more anyway. Titanium scales, come and go. You can't buy an XM. Most XMs don't come with titanium scales. You have to buy them afterwards. They run about $200, which is very expensive. But because Hinderer's machining is always really, really great, they'll fit as long as they're appropriate for the generation and style for the knife. I'll link DLT Trading's parts and stuff for Hinderer as well down below, so you guys can pick up custom parts. I think they do still have some titanium scales. It's just this stonewash textured one is kind of hard to come by as of right now. But yeah, I always put those on there. I got some other parts on there. Picked that up from DLT. Some of these Hinderer nuts and things. That's what's fun about Hinderer knives. I'm still a Hinderer fan. I'm going to keep collecting them. Absolutely. So anyways, yeah, that's my reasoning behind this guy. And, it's just kind of, it feels so capped out, right? It's just so, I love it. It's so perfect, right? But I don't settle on this channel. That doesn't matter. It's not like I'm going to be like, well, I found it. See you guys later. No. Hinderer Knives going to keep going. If you look back at Hinderer's past, he's constantly trying to come out with different designs, different models, variations of things, different blade shapes, right? And by the way, I'm not saying that this blade shape makes all other blade shapes obsolete. No, you should get the blade that you want. The different blade shapes are different. I like this one because it's just kind of all around versatility, not excess in strength or not excess in cutting performance. This is kind of a nice even middle ground. The spear point, the standard drop point blade, just has a fuller in it, right? So it's aesthetically pleasing to me, and it's going to do what I need it to do. Yeah, pick the blade shape you want. But for me, it's just kind of capped out. I know that I'll acquire more Hinderer knives, and I don't know what the blade. I'll just pick up whatever I think is aesthetically interesting. But as far as like a perfect design in an XM18, I'm convinced that I've found it, unless he comes out with something else, and it's likely he'll still come out with something else in the XM18 platform that I'll think, oh, that might be a little bit better, right? But the XM18's design and the platform has been the same for so long. You look at like the Generation 3 and Generation 4, which was around 2012, 8 years ago, it's largely the same thing, other than the tri-way pivot system and the steel lock bar insert, right? And just little things like changing the detail. But yeah, the knives look the same. So I'm wondering, what is an overhaul, of the XM18, or a redesign of the XM18, or maybe just a reskin, fresh coat of paint? Is it coming? What would I want it to be? So truthfully, something that I've found to be mildly annoying, the more that I play with these, I love frame locks, right? And I was drawn to them initially by the idea or the impression of excess strength. There's a strong lock, but triad lock. It's not as strong as a triad lock. Yeah, we know. We know. Thanks. We all know that that's coming. We expect it. It gave that impression of strength, and I learned more about it. And it's a convenience thing. It's strong enough to do whatever it is you're going to do with it, but it's also very easy to manipulate, disengage, and stuff like that. And my hands have grown accustomed to it, so I have a preference with frame locks, and it's just out of familiarity, right? That's the foundation of it. But something that drives me crazy about frame locks when I'm using them is, the idea here is it's exposed. So the harder you squeeze it, during use, well, when you use it, you're naturally going to squeeze it, and it's naturally going to hold that lock in place, which is why the idea of a frame lock disengaging during use, because people used to really go back and forth about that, it's nonsense. The incredibly specific scenario where you're using this thing and squeezing it, where something would have to happen where your fingers would have to pull backwards on the lock, and at the same time you'd have to be cutting something and putting pressure on the nose and sort of twisting. And in that incredibly specific scenario, would the blade come down on your finger? Now, I'm sure people are ready to type me up a book, tell me their stories, and tell me about it, how it's much more like this or that. This lock's better. Frame locks aren't good for... I don't care. I'm not trying to be mean. I'm just saying, not the point of the video. And the big, long comments, if they're like a big book or a wall of text, I don't read them. It's just, I can't, So I'm sorry. That's not really why. The thing that bothers me is that it does affect the geometry over time, and it's not that it makes it necessarily unsafe, but if you squeeze too hard, you can almost accidentally create lock stick. And this is in a crazy situation. Now, I'm not talking about EDCing this knife. I'm talking about really going to town on it. It'll wear the lock bar in, basically decreasing the life of the lock bar faster if you're really squeezing it. And it can affect the geometry of it if you squeeze it really hard, right? It can sometimes, maybe in rare circumstances, create lock rock. The other thing that I don't like about exposed frame locks is, depending on, it doesn't really matter what the deployment method is, but you have to be cognizant of where you're putting your fingers. You can't put excess pressure on the lock bar because that puts pressure on the blade and makes it harder for the blade to deploy. If you hand a frame lock off to a brand new person, they all do the exact same thing. They can't figure out how to deploy it. And they think there's something wrong with it. You just have to learn where to put your fingers, right? And again, that's not a big deal. You just adapt to it. I have completely and totally adapted to this knife. It is very organic. It's easy for me to manipulate it, right? But I can't deny that some of the designs that I have seen with other knives that I've handled here recently are just better. Let me get out the SOCOM Elite. And actually, the first time that it really hit with me, it wasn't with the SOCOM Elite. I'm just going to use the SOCOM Elite as an example here. It was actually with the Holt Spectre V4. They transitioned from their V3 being an exposed frame lock. They transitioned into a countersunk titanium liner lock that had basically the exact same surface contact with the tang as the frame lock did, because the overall profile of the knife wasn't very big. So when they countersunk it, they laid the liner lock into a pocket that was milled into the front scale of the titanium, and dimensionally, it was just almost exactly the same, right? And then any liner lock or frame lock is only as strong as its thickest point. And oftentimes, liner locks don't necessarily need relief cuts because they're a little bit thinner, but you can see the relief cut here, which allows you to easily move the lock bar over. If something was going to bend out, that's where it was going to bend out. Does that mean that that's a weakness of the frame lock? No, I'm not saying that. That's just, that's why the excess, it's like if you are looking at a liner lock or a countersunk liner lock versus a titanium frame lock, my idea of like which is stronger is it's trivial, because they both have the same weakest point, more or less, depending on the dimensions of the knife. And I understand what I'm doing is opening up a can of worms and points or opportunities for argument and discussion. Again, not really the point of the video. You can think whatever you want about that. I'm never going to use my knives hard enough ever to test that. It's never going to be a natural thing that I'm doing to where I'm like, oh, I just found out which one of these is stronger and exactly. I'm just going to do cutting stuff, right? Which is what you should be doing with your knife anyway. You shouldn't be using it as a grappling hook or, a means of scaling a building. That's ridiculous. You might find out then, but most of us aren't doing that. So, to tie this all together, because I'm realizing we're now at 17 minutes, I would actually like to see Hinderer knives do a countersunk liner lock, just like the Holt Spectre V4, or in this case, serving as a visual example, the SOCOM Elite. The surface contact, this is a fairly thick liner lock with plenty of contact, right? It's not as thick as the entirety of the lock bar on the XM18, but as far as the contact point, it's about the same. And I'd venture to guess the strength there is about the same too. Feels plenty solid, very easy to engage and manipulate. But the nice thing is no matter how hard I squeeze it, no matter where I put my fingers, no matter how hard I squeeze it during use, and no matter where I put my fingers when I'm deploying it, I get to choose the most comfortable position for me because I'm interacting with the outside, the aluminum frame, and not the lock itself. It doesn't matter where I put my hands, right? Most of the time, that's not going to matter, but in some situations, I could imagine needing a knife and being focused on the task at hand and not focused, even that little tiny bit of subconscious that's required for me to make sure that my hands are being placed in exactly the right spot. I can see in some cases me not quite, being mentally dedicated to that and missing it or going to deploy it and it's too heavy and I slip off of it or whatever. And if I'm up on a ladder or really high on a building and I drop the knife because of it, that sucks, right? Anyways, there's my reasoning behind that. I would like to see a countersunk liner lock in the XM18. I know they can do it because they did it on the 3-inch Eclipse. And it was kind of like a titanium frame lock with overlays that were, and then the overlays were shadow boxed by the frame underneath. Wonderful. Wonderful. That was so, I saw that and I was like, oh yes, please, I would really like to see, and if not a total generational overhaul, just a variant of the XM18. I would love to see a liner lock with full overlays or a countersunk liner lock, right? I'd love to see that. But I want options for a titanium overlay. I don't want to see G10 on both sides. I want to see it in a titanium side. So, you know, we keep this area right here is all filled in, and then we see the liner underneath the titanium liner milled into the titanium, exactly the same way that it is on the Holt Spectre V4. And then, you know, basically nothing changes with the other side. You know, it's just some design elements, I guess. The main thing I'd like to see there all the way around as far as how the frame looks is contouring. A good example of how they're definitely capable of doing this. Back in 2012 or 2013, the ZT0560 was a Hinderer design. It was designed, as far as I know, it was totally designed by Rick Hinderer, and it was just, you know, created or manufactured and sold by ZT. They contoured that whole thing. The G10 side, the titanium side is awesome. It's golf ball textured, totally contoured, beautiful. And then we just never saw it again. We kept the same kind of blocky design with the XM, and moving forward with the ZT0562, which is still one of ZT's most popular knives right now. It's just I want to see the contouring. That would be sick. If they did that, that would literally it would check every last box on my list, that playlist I did a long time ago about the quest for the ultimate folding knife. They changed those two things about the XM, right? And I've got it on something like this. Yeah, that solves every potential issue that I could possibly, you know, label as an issue. My nitpicky little self, right? That would be perfect for me. It may not be perfect for you, and you might be able to still point out little micro flaws. You know, that's fine. You don't have to think the same way as me. But that is truthfully what I want to see. I would be so overjoyed. And I don't know if there's any possibility of there being contouring, but I have high hopes for this liner lock thing because he's playing around with it. The 3-inch Eclipse, I mean, all these other models he's come out with it, none of them have done as well as the 3.5-inch XM18, right? But it was fairly popular. People liked it. I liked it. A lot of people said, oh, this liner lock thing is really cool. And I love these new design elements where he's got some different chamfering going on with the scales, and he's got different screws that are more domed and just kind of look more modern. Yeah, do that, but take that to the XM18. And you know what's funny is I won't be surprised if this happens. It's not like Rick needs me or anybody at the Hinderer design team needs me or anybody like me to tell them this. They're likely miles ahead of me. And whatever it is that they're doing, right? If it ends up being exactly this, great. But my money is on it'll probably be something better than anything that I'm describing here. Whatever it is that they're working on in the future, because they're constantly working on new things. The whole innovation thing, that is Rick Hinderer's sweet spot. Like he is the innovator for sure. There's a lot of innovators, but I'm just saying, like he's always like the whole like how parts and things fit together, the modular nature of things, and the whole trying to come up with new things that have not been done before. Like, he's done that many times, most recently in the tri-way pivot system. But yeah, that would be super cool. This video doesn't need to be much longer. That's just really what I'd like to see. And I think that would work out really well for a lot of people. And also, there need to be true left-handed XM18s. I don't know. We have left-handed scales, but there's so many I think 10% of us are left-handed, right? That's huge. The left-handed scales, you got to pay more money. If you got to buy a right-handed frame lock XM and just put a left-handed, like a G10 scale that's got a spot for a pocket clip that's milled, those are $100. You need a left-handed. We need a true left-hand, like the locking mechanism is made for a left-handed person. Lefty XMs for sure. Outside of that, I'm sure that Hinderer will screw around with S45VN. I'm almost positive that that'll be the case. I don't know. None of this is fact. It's just what I want, what I'm hoping, speculating, right? It'd be cool to see, you know, the Vanax Super Clean and some other. I'd like to see some more exploration with some tool steels. I think it would be. I love Rex 45. I know that Hinderer really likes to use steels that are better at resisting corrosion And if they're not, you know, like his O1 tool steel, then like that one's parkerized and is much more resilient than just bare O1. So, you know, it would be really cool to see more steels. I don't think it's outside of the realm of possible, right? But it would be neat to see that. And I think we can expect crazy variations of modular parts. That's already, I don't feel like I need to ask for that. I think that's just gonna come, you know. We're gonna see that kind of stuff. So anyways, 25 minutes. Is there really anything else I need to say here? I don't think so. This is a great knife. Hinderer knives in general are great knives. If this looks cool to you, it feels as good as it looks. If you've never handled one and you're like, oh, that looks nice, I wonder if it feels high quality. Yeah, it feels crazy high quality. Absolutely. I will link Hinderer knives in general, XM18 3-inch, XM18 3.5 inches, XM24s like the big guy you're seeing here down in the description, as well as custom parts, and a link where you can check out all the different knives that Rick Hinderer makes and that are available right now. Definitely browse. They are expensive, guys. At base, the XM18s come in at $425, but if you don't know, I've owned 17 different XM18s, and then I've owned something like 27 or 28 Hinderers in total. I love them. The quality's never faltering. It just seems to get better and better and better. I'm always happy to buy them. Now, I don't own that many anymore. Oftentimes I have to sell. I'm not wealthy, so I do have to sell my Hinderers to buy new ones. But yeah, the quality's always there. And I've always been very impressed with them. So I'm excited to see what comes in the future. But anyways, guys, I think that's going to be it. Check out the links in the description. Follow me on Instagram. If you enjoyed this video, please leave a like. If you'd like to check out my other content, I do, of course, have lots of videos of knives that are either expensive or inexpensive that I do or don't like, so check those out. And if you enjoy all my content, go ahead and click on that Metal Complex logo right there and subscribe, because there's definitely more coming. Thanks again for watching, everybody.